Hello, any early lurkers? Just waiting to get started. Hey, Sam. Thanks for joining. Hope all is well. Didn't get the chance to catch your stream today on Code It Live. I was in a meeting when it popped up. Let me know if you have any feedback for me. I think I got most of the mechanics good with it this weekend. I might spend. Am I too tiny? I was worried about I was taking up too much space, Brian. Didn't want my big head in the way. Is that a little bit better? Just trying not to take up a good chunk of the screen. I think for the first couple of walkthroughs I did, a lot of the content I was in this corner, so I moved my face around a lot. Still trying to find a good spot for my face. I'm gonna fix the lighting. Got these little 2 dots here. Yeah, go full screen. You missed all the good content. Got the green screen working, although I could see there's some kind of feedback here and a little bit up here, but I bought some additional lighting to help with that and fix some of the other fan lighting. Yeah, you're talking about over here? I noticed a lot of people have it there. I tried it both here and there. It kind of just depends on what I'm working on. I'll leave it there for now and see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to get started. This is episode 4 or 5, number 5 in a series. The overall outline is want to kind of cover application flow from beginning to end. So we started out with just a quick walkthrough of 3 different common IDEs in the Microsoft world: Microsoft Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, JetBrains Writer. Then we will yeah, I don't have Miley swinging by my screen. I'm lucky to have Brian here. Sam. Then we covered some of the basic model development, and then we built out a business layer. Today we'll work on getting together the database layer. This is a small, simple application right now. The idea is to basically track our contacts. We have contact information, basic ID, first name, last name, and a couple other fields. Today, it does get crazy. I was there for one of your raids. It went like 15 minutes. If I was a little bit hearing sensitive, I probably would have lost it, Brian. But it's all fun and good times. I still have to figure out a lot of that. Right now, I have no alerts popping up. So if I get new followers or anything, or any of those grades or welcomes or any of that stuff. So that's this weekend's project, assuming I have some time. So today we're going to add a database to this because I'm working on the Mac and wanted to make it a little bit easier. I'm going to just work with a SQLite database to be able to port it over. By the time we actually physically deploy this, we'll probably work with a SQL Server or another database, but part of this overall stream and the learning is to kind of show how you can start off simple and then with the right architecture eventually migrate and make things better. So we're going to start off with this SQLite database. So the first thing I'm going to do, like we did for the logic, is add a new project. And that new project is going to be our database project. So with most naming standards that I have here, I typically start off with the root namespace, in this case, contacts, and then what it's actually doing. So for now, we're just going to call this data. And I magically took a different one. And we want this to be a standard app or standard framework, because we're going to move this around between multiple different user interfaces later on. Hit create, wait a couple of seconds, JetBrains ReSharper will create the project, and then you'll see the typical class 1 in there once it's done. We're going to go ahead and rename the class 1 once it starts. And let's call this what do we call this? Contact manager. So we're going to call this one contact repository, which is a common name for it. Contact repository. Should rename the file, rename the class, and we should be good to go. So our repository, we want to have, actually we already have it called data, so we don't even need the repository right now. That's going to be a different pattern we'll follow later. We're going to use Entity Framework for this for now. So I'm going to name this the what they call context in Entity Framework. This one's really hard because it's going to be context, which is really challenging to say. So if I get it wrong a couple of times, I apologize in advance. So all this is being based off of just a sample that you can get from, see you, Brian, enjoy dinner. Say hi to the missus. This is all based on the EF tutorial, which we have highlighted here. So if you want to follow along with this at some point, you can go to helpful links, click on this, getting started, managing the connection strings. We'll pretty much use all 4 of these throughout this. So if you see me swapping screens, you'd know why, because I'm just looking up the examples. So in order to start with any framework, you need to be able to do some basic setup. So here I am going to start by adding a package. So I'm going to go into our NuGet, and let's not do an update live on the stream because that would be terrible. I actually did that once before, not on a stream, but I did a Windows 10 update on a machine while I was on an airplane going to a conference, and the installation borked. So I eventually fixed it while I was at the hotel, and then I was like, there was a Visual Studio update, and I'm like, well, I already got a failed Windows 10 update. I can't fail a Visual Studio update. Went and did the Visual Studio update, and that failed too. So I learned my lesson, learned it really hard for that particular conference. I don't do any updates a week prior to. One of the other things I also learned was with certain applications, I turn off automatic updating. I made the mistake of Visual Studio Code. I'm on the insiders track, which gets you stuff ahead of time. And I applied an update right before a talk. And because they've been pretty stable, this particular update removed all keyboard input. So I couldn't type anything while I was doing Visual Studio Code. 10 minutes into the demo, I just gave up, downloaded regular Visual Studio Code without the Insiders edition, and eventually got back up and running. But at that point, 25 minutes was gone in the hour demo. So mental note, don't do any updates prior to, like I haven't done an update on this machine all week. Tonight is the update night to give me 3 or 4 days until the next stream to figure it out. Anyway, that was a little ramble on. Let's go and add this. So in order to do this, we need to add the package Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. And I'm typing it out because there are so many different options. And then we're going to do the SQLite. You see there are lots of different providers. There's SQLite, SQL Server, SQLite Core, etc. I'm going to do something that unfortunately a fellow streamer, one of Sam's colleagues, Ed, didn't do, and he did Entity Framework Core.SQLite.Core, assuming that that was the .NET Core version of the SQLite provider. In fact, it isn't. One of the common naming standards, just for everyone else's benefit, is it's usually Microsoft, the system, the application name, and then any extensions. So in this case, SQLite is the one we want to use. And by other conventions, a lot of products will add a core if there's other shared commonality across the board. So in this particular case, SQLite contains all of the definitions and the implementation specifics for Entity Framework. So it's going to implement the DB context and everything else. And the core is everything that gets you direct access to SQLite. And you'll see that as a common pattern across multiple frameworks. So I'm going to go and add this to my data project. Hit enter, wait a second or so till I get this dialog box that says everything's there. Now I got to use it. First step in using it is to implement the interface or inherit from the class DB context. Once I do that, ReSharper, the IntelliSense and Writer tells me, hey, I'm missing a reference. Do I want to do it? So I'll hit the Option key and enter, or Alt enter if you're on a Windows PC, and now it's there. So setting it up is actually pretty easy. We're doing what's called the code first, or the POCO approach for plain old C# objects. We already have our objects declared in the domain object, the contact, the phone, etc. So now we want to expose those out. So you do that by creating a public property. And the public property is based off of the DB set. So you do public DB set. We're using generics now, where we give it the class that we want to work on. So I'm going to do domain. Because the class is not registered, the IntelliSense is freaking out. So I'm just going to do contact for now. And then give it a name. Typically, you take the plural of what the object is, and then a getter and setter. Now this will expose my contacts out to anyone calling this class. So let's see if I can go and add this. This has been tricky. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I get the little red writer light bulb that says there's a bug, but I have suggestions for you. So if I did the Option Enter key or return key, it says, hey, I know about this contact object. It sits inside of your contacts domain contact. Do you want me to use that one? This particular case, that's exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to hit enter and we're good to go. And now you typically do that for all the others. So db set addresses. See, it's smart enough to figure out now that I'm referencing a known object that I want to pluralize it now. db set phone, and then it's going to automatically do phones, get and set public db set. I need to do the other classes. Now, in theory, I don't really need to do these other helper classes, but as part of maintenance, we're going to later on add the ability to add address type and others. Otherwise, behind the scenes, any framework will be smart enough to know, because the addresses has an address type as part of it, that it'll automatically include that in there. But I'm going to add it now so that we can add some dummy data to it. And then phone types. So that is all we have now. Now, if you've ever done any database work before, this is how you pretty much get access with Entity Framework using the code first approach. So now I'll be able to get a list of all the contacts, all the addresses. I'll be able to add, delete, and remove them from here. But I don't have a database, nor do I have a way to connect to the databases. I need to provide any framework with the location of the database. And excuse me for a second, I'm just going to copy and paste. In order to do that, you have to override the on configuring event. Now, I'm only doing this right here because we're only doing a sample. In future versions of this talk, or in future iterations of this stream, we're going to see how this is controlled outside of the actual data layer, so that a consumer can say, hey, go and use this source. Let me rename this to contacts, and then we're going to want a fully qualified path to this. And I believe I can just do, I might have to get the fully qualified path. Let me go back to my desktop. Reason why I want a fully qualified path is because this is going to get populated in multiple database, in multiple locations, and if you run it, depending on whether or not you run it in release mode or debug mode, the database might sit elsewhere. So I'm going to put it in a fixed location so that it's always in the same spot. So let's put this here. It's always going to drop it off in that database folder, which mirrors that path. Your mileage may vary, but this is my particular case. Again, this is only for samples. Once we start introducing dependency injection and other technologies to this, we will interject this piece as well as change the location and move off of this particular SQLite provider. So now I have everything ready to go, but I have no way of really creating that database or executing that database. So So let's go and create them. In order to do that, we need a global tool. So I'm going to go hop over to our terminal window and just check the screen to make sure that the resolution is good for terminal. Yep. Now you need to do a couple of different things with it. The first thing I'm going to do is install a global tool in .NET. So in this case, I'm saying .NET, the command line. I want you to look at the tool section, and then we're going to install, and I'm going to install a global tool called .NET-EF. Reason for this is this allows .NET to be able to go and, or more so, any framework to create the database for us and do what are called migrations. Sometimes you would do this, most of the time you aren't, but I'm kind of showing you an app from the very beginning and up. I also need to add an application to or a package in order to allow for these migrations. You'll notice here that the package was already installed. I installed this tool many times. I still wanted to show you the format. So let me go navigate to our contacts/data. Contacts.data and make sure I have the CS proj. So we are going to add a package. So .NET add package, and then we want the Microsoft.entity framework .design. This gives us the ability to add tables, delete tables, etc. Once this package is added, we'll then have the ability to go and create the tables or start off what are called migrations. There's no package. Let me go back to NuGet and try that. Any framework. Oh, did I not type core? I probably didn't type core. Yep, I forgot the core. That's why I couldn't find the package. You can also do this by using the NuGet menu within Rider or within Visual Studio. Let me hide you. Now that I have that, the next step for us to do is to create the migrations. So I'm going to do .NET and now say use the tool EF. That's the tool that I quote unquote installed a minute ago. And we are going to create a migrations or use the migrations function, and then we're going to add a new one, and we'll just call it initial create. This essentially creates a file that allows EF to know where you are in the overall migration of your product. So right now it's building the actual executable, in this case DLL, looking to see what the structure of the target should be and go forward. But I got a startup project, context data, targets framework, .NET standard. There is no row time associated with that, and product as targeting it cannot be executed directly. Executable. Oh. Unfortunately, any framework needs a actual executable to run this test. So let me go and create a console app to allow us to do that. Typically, I would have a web API or something else that would allow us to generate it, but this we've just started building out all of the libraries to help support the ultimate goal. But in order to get this working, let's build a console app and then call this one contacts.console. Hit create. And then we're going to want to navigate back up to that folder because we're going to add the designer to that. We'll remove the designer from the other one just to be clean about it. I hate having references to projects that we don't use. So actually, while we're here, I think I can just run .NET remove package Microsoft.entity framework core.design. Yeah, I got the syntax right in the first shot. That's a plus. So let's go back up a level and then down to contacts.console. And then I want to .NET add package. Still with me, Sam? Now that I got the package, let's try and run the migrations. Build should work and everything, and then it'll create the initial migrations for us. Got the build started. Oh, I probably didn't change the, yeah. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba. I have a runtime error in here because, why is right line not working? That shouldn't be there, but I believe I'm going to need to add a reference off to the data project. Add reference to data, which means I'm going to need to add a reference to domain by default. It will actually add it to itself, and at some point we're going to add logic, so let's just add them all. Now let's make sure it builds. So I'm going to do a Control-Shift-B and make sure all the projects build. Ooh, context domain is .NET Standard 2.0. We'll have to kind of resynchronize those. Good, all the projects built. Let me set this one as startup to make sure it the designer doesn't complain. And where do I do that? In Writer. There should be a startup project and manage. Oh, it's already right there. It should be good enough. Let's go back to our terminal window and let's try adding in the initial create. Okie, we can see it. Well, it's definitely going a lot longer than it did before, which is a good sign. Means it's actually doing something. Yeah, it succeeded. There it goes. Any framework core tool version is older than that other runtime. Update the tool so latest version. No DB context was found. Oh, this is killing me. Why wasn't the DB context found? Well, in either case, let's go and update the version of the tools I have. Dotnet tools, and I think it's update. I'm just taking a guess here. It's not complaining so far, so update might work. Yes, it was updated. Now I am going to Google this to see the fix because I've never seen this error before. So let's go back here. And take out this because that's going to sway the search results. Wow, lots of videos for that. Apparently it's a common issue. Let's see what the first set of search results say. Package manager. It's NA Framework 6. So that is not it. Let me make sure I do NA Framework Core. Let's see how this one comes up. I don't know what ADP is, so I'm guessing it's not that. Can't migrate ASP core. This is what I want. Using any framework core migrations for a class library. Core relation WPF. Let's go in core. I got that. Relationships. Core. Got that except for the tools. DB context. Has a lot of that. Don't want the framework version. This should work for core. That didn't really help me. It looks like it was back to the scene. Oh, maybe I have to do that in the console app. Let's see. Mainframe record tools are running, add migration for framework, no context, show the correct assembly. Well, let's see what Stack Overflow says for this. It's good to know that I made 5 or 6 streams without having the Google stuff, so kudos to me for that. In the Project Manager console, select the project. DB context is defined. It specify project name. Oh, but this is in the Project Manager console. I don't know if I can do that with the .NET Global tools. So I'm going to pull this one off to the side so I can look at it, and let's see if that works. Oh, I did want to do that. I went total full screen on it and I lost the stream. So let's see if I can do that here in the command line. So I do .NET EF migrations and then help. Add move list. Add help. Ooh, wow. Minus P project. Okay, so let's try that approach. So add, and I believe the syntax was initial create and then minus P. Let's be consistent, do 2 dashes project, and it should be contacts.data. Let's see if that works. Unable to, oh, couldn't find that project. Let me go up one level and try that contacts data and see if that works. While that's working, let's do .NET EF migrations add and see if I can find the command lines for it. Let's see, did that work? Target, there's no runtime with this framework. Startup project, context targets framework .NET standard. There is no runtime associated with this framework, and targets cannot be executed directly. Let me change this project temporarily from .NET standard off to .NET Core app. Let's try that and see if it works. In the meantime, getting this configuration. Have the tools. Doesn't list the command lines like I wanted. Try to find the command lines afterwards. Oh, well, the build is going. Might as well look for the command lines. Custom operations. CPU is taxed right now. I actually ordered a Elgato card to help with the streaming, so hopefully this weekend I'll set it up. So use a different PC for streaming and the recording than the primary PC I'm working on, so that we don't tax it like I've been doing. Oh, this is good. We are back to needing to install that package, so that's a positive step. .NET add package. Never saw that one before. Writing var folders, blah blah blah. Okay, it's added. Let's try the migration. Unable to retrieve product metadata. Ensure. I've never seen this one before either. This is why I build all databases by scratch and not have to worry about this. Give it one more shot. If not, we will go and build out the databases from scratch. Come on, internet. Not a good time to be slow. You have to point to web project. Dotnet EF startup project. -C name of a DB contacts. Huh. That would be weird. Okay. Let me try it out. // contacts dot console / contacts dot console. Seems like an awful lot of work just to create a database. Yeah, I got a funny feeling I got the qualified path wrong. Let's try that. Start a project. Dotnet. See topics. Let's try this one. Hopefully this works. Let's see if there's a shortcut tool for it. Oh, there's a build error. No wonder why it's not working. I should have seen that. You just Control-Shift-B to make sure the build's working. Console's built. Everything's good. Now let's try to do this. Please work this time. Please work this time. Please work this time. Huh. That is really weird. Okay, I guess we're not going to cover migrations today. I can start by going and creating a database. I'm not sure if the writer data grip will allow me to, but I will try to create one straight from here. If not, we'll continue on Tuesday with figuring it out. Let's call this contacts file. Let's go to, where's my projects folder? Databases. Open. It looks like I need to download missing drivers. Oh, there is a new. Cool. New projects. Databases, and let's call this contacts.db. Hit save. Test the connection, which hopefully should work because it's a new one. There it goes. Oh, it took a while. Let's see if it actually created it. I'm going to click OK. Go back to my databases folder, and there's contacts. Cool. So our database is there. Now I could add in all the different tables right from here. So let's choose new table. And I believe it was called contacts. And then we can add in each individual column, which is gonna take forever. So let me do this. We're gonna cancel out of there for a minute. And if I don't do it, I will, if I can't do it via any framework in the next 5 minutes with the migrate, I will work on scripts so that we can start showing it on Monday. So let's improve our search. Unable to retrieve product metadata. There's an issue, which could be just someone's personal bug. Couldn't do, so we can at least check this one and see if there's a sample to, oh, Julie Lerman figured it out. More data for you. Preview had the same problem. Couldn't help myself, did some more exploration, checking project assets, JSON, noticed it didn't always have version EF. Core packages investigating this. Indeed, the culprit, I checked out the packages before the commit went in. The actual cause of this and why the changing temp file break. It's clear, don't know why. Oh. Okay, that doesn't seem to help. Okay, let's see here. We're getting unable to retrieve product metadata, ensure it's an MS Build .NET Core project. So let's try to make sure it's a .NET Build project. Properties. Language version is fine. Nullable, want to delete that. Assembly is fine. Properties. I have a lot of properties. Let's see if there's a build. BUILD, build completion, build depends on. Let's expand this dialog box a little bit more. Build in parallel, true, build link action, build. Nothing there. Let's go to MS and see if there's an MS build setting. MOUSE. There's a lot of MS build. MS build all projects. It looks like it's MS build. What is it missing? What are you missing? I don't know. So that's there, that's there. What if I just take out all of this now, since we've changed the type of output and everything else? Build started. Build succeeded. So far, no red. So far, no red. Yes. I have no idea what we did, but just removing all those paths. I guess I just needed to change it from .Net. Cool. Welcome everyone from OmaTurn_Greg. Thanks for joining. That's a lot of viewers, considering I'm just about to wrap up. So now that we have the initial script created for the database, we see now that there is a migrations table that got created, or a migrations class that got created, which if we look in there, we'll have all the code to actually generate the databases for us. Hello, Street Maniac, and welcome. Now that we have that, let's go and let's get rid of all this other crud from here and start the next one up, which is .NET EF database update. If I do this, what .NET the EF tool is doing is going through that list of migrations and is going to make the database equal to what the code is. And this is just the creation of tables. So we'll see 5 or 6 tables created as a result. As you can see in some of the command here, let's hide you for now. You know, there's going to be a create table with the name of contacts that has these columns and primary keys and so on. Now you probably, if you know anything about databases, you're probably wondering where it's getting a lot of that stuff from. Any framework makes some assumptions with your data. It always assumes that the class is going to be the table name. So if I look at our domain, it's going to assume that we want to create a class of contact. And by default, it uses anything with the word ID at the end, assuming you have the name of the class and ID as the primary key. So if we look at the script here for it, we will see that under contacts, we have the contact ID, which set to nullable, which is an int. We don't want it nullable. We also have it set to an auto increment. That's .NET Core's entity framework that's saying this should be a primary key because it's an ID. So we want it to auto increment. And then you see we're adding a constraint here for the primary key, calling it primary key underscore contacts, and it's using the contact ID. And then you'll see the same for all the others. For phone types, it took the phone type ID as a primary key, added a column for table type and description. So that was the initial database creation. If we go back to our database viewer, now if I open this, hit the little refresh button, it's going to go back, open. Now we see in our main, we have 5 tables. There's a couple of other tables, which I'll cover in a quick second, but these tables should match. If we look at the contacts, we now have an integer that's set to automatically increment, first name, last name. The SQLite does not have an implementation or understand the data type of date time. So any framework will convert it from date time into this text and vice versa for us automatically. And then you see we have phones. Now you notice here it also added for us a primary key for the phone, And then it added foreign key relationships. So the contact ID to go back to our contacts. It added an index for contacts so we can quickly look it up, and an index for phone type because phone type was a primary key, and it was also an integer. We know that we're going to probably want to look up based on that. These two tables are by default part of SQLite, the master table, which lists all the tables that are in here and data types being used, and the sequence, which will have a list of all the auto incremented numbers. So as soon as we create our first contact, there'll be a row here that says contacts with a number, assuming 1, and then increment upwards. This EF migration table, if we were to look at this table itself, we will see, where are you? Modify table, database tools, jump, double click, or I just double click on it. Oh, here it is. It's going to show us what we did. So we only ran the migration ID of 2020-05-07, and then that's a timestamp _ initial create with NA Framework Core Product version 3.13. So we look at our migrations, it knows that we ran this script because this is essentially the class name for it. So later on, if we go and add in any additional fields, NA Framework will know where to catch up on. So to Monday's stream at 4:00 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to take this database and now we're going to seed it with some dummy values. We'll essentially create some basic values for it, and then we will populate the rest of this logic layer, our contact manager, and actually add in all the data access points to that. Hope you had a great day. For everyone that came from Uma_Term_Greg, please feel free to follow if you liked the last 10 minutes of this. If you want any more on what we're working on, we have been working on building out a .NET application from scratch. Repositories in the chat, where we are taking essentially from nothing and starting off and building out ultimately an application that will have allow you to manage your contacts. So we've gone through 3 streams already. This is the 3rd one. The first 2 were just introductions to IDEs. You can go to that GitHub repo that I posted to see a list. All the videos and the commits for those applications or for the streams are in there. And we'll essentially be following this outline as we go through and commit stuff to the repo. That's all I have for today. If you like what you see, you can follow me on Twitter at JoeG, my blog at josephguadagno.net. Hit the follow button if you're following from here, and follow me on Facebook at josephguadagno.net. Video for this will be up on YouTube. You can also check out the Git repo when it's done with the video for the full portion of this. That's all I have for today. I am going to look to see how I can forward the people that are rated me here to another channel that I know. So bear with me while I look to see if any of my other friends or ones I follow on Twitch are active. I don't know if there's an actual command that just lets you follow the next person in my host list. Everyone I follow is offline, So unfortunately, I can't raid anyone to someone else. Let's see what happens if I just type in raid by itself. No, I don't know any channels. If anyone posts a channel in here that they're interested in looking at, all of mine are offline right now. Cool. It's coming. Hopefully you follow along. Thanks, Greg, for the follow. Have a great day, everyone.